So, Stellaris is a 4X game which stands for Explore, Expand, Exploit, and Exterminate. In fact, that's a pretty good structure for the video. Yet, even before we start, we must address the most important part of any gameplay, the character creation. And I know, it usually takes about solid 2 weeks to make your generic cartoon Mary Sue OC with edgy, oversaturated colors that end up making it look like a talentless vomit. But we only got like 10 minutes. So then, your empire. For starters, I recommend just taking one of the human ones, the pre-made ones, and that's a bit more standard and at least decent for reference points. Of course, if you feel special, far be it for me to tell you you can't make the most disgusting, pansy-ass, pacifistic cowards of the galaxy. But frankly, with that level of anti-ambition, I think I'm gonna puke and instigate exterminatus upon thy ass. Anyways, you selected your empire and generated the game world, galaxy. Well, let's begin with the stage 1 of X4 games, Exploration. Before we start, of course, about the technologies and whatnot else, just pick whatever. Realistically speaking, right now, you don't particularly care about that. You just don't know what they do. So rather learn the more general things and then get into the min-maxing things. So pick whatever looks good. Oh, and except one thing. Remember, strike craft is priority. That's the best defense you'll ever get. Everyone spawns with one science ship that is manned by a scientist. You basically send out this science vessel to explore. In Stellaris, however, exploring a system is counterintuitive. Basically, you plop your butt cheeks and make a fart in a system and boom, you have explored it. No, what is important is surveying a system. Basically, it's more sensual interaction between the scientist and the celestial object that Paradox deemed to be too spicy to recreate in a digital format, so they opted for hentai-level censorship. During surveying, there could be some anomalies popping up, and those can either be researched right away or left for later, and that's exactly what you tend to do for fast expansion. Nevertheless, these can bring additional resources for the system, or discover an elder nether beast of pure horrifying gaze. You know, potato. Now, as you're starting to play, there's also the speed up buttons, Currently it's paused, but you can do the fastest, which I tend to play the most on, because all the other settings are quite slow, so it's gonna take a while to actually accomplish anything. So, it's nice that you can increase the speed, and you should do that too. For best exploration tactic, you usually discover your opponents as fast as possible and survey the fastest lines to the choke points. For this, building another explorer, or 2, or even 3 is not a bad idea, but you need scientists for each, so maybe 2 or 3 science vessels would be enough for most maps. Once the system is surveyed, you can start building and claiming it. As for research projects, well, the same as anomalies. Some are timed, others are not. Basically, if you just started out, just click yes. Yes on everything. Yes to Nether Horrors and yes to that subscribe and like buttons down below. And definitely click on that Patreon link in the description to support the content I make. So, with that, we move on to expanding. Expansion in Stellaris is done in a few ways, but obligatory expansion is done by building outposts. This is done once you've surveyed the system and used a construction ship to build an outpost. That's simple. Once the outpost is up, the territory is yours and you can exploit the system. Technically, this is all that expansion devolves into. Sure, you can build the outpost that is not connected to your territory, but more influence you'll have to pay for it. So very rarely you'd be doing this. So always expand territory next to your own, and most often that is also the fastest way to take the choke points, of course unless you're out of time. Now, another way to expand is by taking it from the weak and feeble-minded peasants. So, well, if you're a galactic psychopath like myself, you will covet everyone's territory and will do anything in order to get it. So that is basically done through war, but it's annoying due to the claim system. Basically, because the galaxy is some wuss-filled bureaucratic nightmarescape where in order to fart, you need to fill 10 request forms, you also need to issue claims that you want the system, even if you're the only 2 around. It's stupid and costs influence. The claim system basically is there to ensure the acquisition of the territory in case there are multiple parties in the war fiesta. I hate bureaucracy! Anyways, after the war is done, depending on the outcome, the conquered territories may be transferred to you. Unless you're playing with one of the total war empires. These empires don't give two flying xenofecal generators about the claims and takes all that it destroys in the wake of your awesomeness. Woo! Murder! Now, let's see. Next is oh gods. Well, we moved from bureaucracy to economy. Kill me, please. So, exploitation, the main focal pinnacle of Stellaris. As a new player, this is what you must focus the most. Once the territory is acquired, you can start building resource stations that basically are just that, resource stations. And if any habitable planets are around, well, you can colonize, terraform, or wrap in bubble wrap and use as a basketball, I don't care. Basically, resource stations take their share of upkeep, but you can't really change any of that. And besides, the real trouble are the pesky little creatures living on the planets. Here's what I learned about Stellaris and how to exploit it. Well, at least to a decent degree. Number 1. The safest way to play is reactionary. This means that you act only when something is bad or needed. Basically, like a young parent, you let the baby sleep until there are too many noises or not enough of them. Also, if the baby is on fire, there might be something wrong. Let's say you have a planet with 3 pops, and after a while, one more pops up. Oh gods, I'm making puns now. Please kill me. Someone, please put me out of my misery. Anyhow, that one extra pop has no job, and thus it will appear on the sidebar. It's time to build something, if a planet tile is open. As said, you play the game in a reactionary style, so whenever a resource or a thing is missing, you build it. Remember to take your time and get acquainted with the buildings, as most of them are just reskinned between all the empire types, so once you learn one, the same can be applied to others. Either you build a district or you build a building. Mind you that you need to balance it out, so better focus the tiles first and then the districts. That's a general rule of thumb and not applicable to everything, clearly. Planets are where you can properly balance out the economy that your expansion had created. Demolishing or rebuilding things should also be a thing you should consider. But for now, just don't drop the baby. Number 2. As a beginner, don't worry about specializing anything. Leave that for later. Yes, you can specialize planets according to their beneficial or negative traits, and that's worth keeping in mind, but you should not rush and, again, just play a reactionary game. Number 3. Pray to RNGs as you did not screw anything and nothing's on fire. Finally, drop to your knees and pray to the piece of crap RNG that the Pops won't revolt and spawn their own empire like what the Pilgrims did to the British. Pray to the RNGs that he won't slap you with a wet fish. Just pray for mercy. And then just wait to win the game. Or get utterly violated by the mid-game crisis. Or... now that the boring nonsense is out of the way, it's time for the galactic genocide! Oh, wait, mass murder? Oh, wait, no, that's also too dark. Exterminate? Crap. Well, I can't make this non-horrific, so let's just go with Yamek's happy time. Time to turn any and all things that are not us into tasty shashliks and terrorize anything that's left with the mental capacity for speech. The exterminate part of 4x Xander. Now, as said at the start, if you're some sort of nature's mistake and lack any inborn capability of propagation, may I introduce you to my slave camps, where you will be very, very happy. But for the normal specimen, it's time to kill, kill, kill! As I mentioned in the expansion part, it's a whole mess to deal with the claims to take over someone, but you will have to unless you orbital bombard the filthy Xenos into oblivion, in which case... usually it's faster to just take over, and now normal territory is simple, right? You just go, kill, done. But when you encounter a system with a colonized planet, well, it's time for some small annoyances. Which means indiscriminate bombardments. Or building armies and micromanaging the cavalcade of stupidity. So go to any preferably closest colonized planet, any planet, and start mass producing armies. For mid-game, about 300 to 500 probably would do. So once your numbers are bigger than the planet's numbers, you'll land them and invade, and boom, it's yours. Woo. And you know, it sucks that on top of that, if you try to queue up the landings on planets, the AI will tell you to go suck on a cactus and only land on the last planet in the queue. So that needs fixing. But until then, manual landing on each planet is required. God damn it. Once the planet is taken over, well, depending on how much you enjoy the new workforce, you can either purge them or keep as workforce. I love playing my Devouring Swarm Empire a lot these days, and purging is all I know. But for starters, an extra bump in pops is great. So that's generally about it. Pray to RNGesus, deal with bureaucracy, and wish for an early grave. Fun times! As for Ascension perks and traditions, for now just pick whatever looks good. And as for shipbuilding, keep it on all auto. Just don't need to change anything. Keep it simple, stupid! Frankly, the best advice I can give you is that to build and fortify choke points or borders with strikecraft. They're insanely powerful, and play in the reactionary playstyle. Make sure that the economy is going fine and dandy, because that's usually the main thing that buries you. Even to this day I tend to refer to this playstyle, even though normally in RTS games I tend to play into a harassment type or aggressive playstyle. Here, in Stellaris, a slow death is best you can hope for. Regardless, learning the planet management has been quite the chore. I still remember playing the first version of the game, and oh my, the game has changed. But for the better. Anyways, let me know what are the beginner tips and questions you may have. Maybe something for the future video that could be discussed. But until then, I've done a few Stellaris videos, so do go check them out. Especially that Devouring Swarm guide. I swear, it's most fun I've had in Stellaris. So just remember, purge them all! Oh my... yes. As for the Ascension perks and traditions, for now, just pick whatever looks good. As for shipbuilding... oh, fuck! God damn it. Blooper!